Hello, I'm Adrian Finnegan. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, Brexit has begun. On the anniversary of the vote that triggered Britain's shock decision to leave the EU, we'll take a look at where things stand. Also this week, the oil bear is back. What's behind that renewed slump in oil prices and what it all means for petroeconomics here in the Gulf. Plus, Talk to the Hand, a company in South Korea, has opened what it says is the first BioPay shop, where customers can pay for things with a scan of their palm. Now, many of us will remember feeling a kind of shell shock exactly 1 year ago when the United Kingdom voted to exit the European Union, when Britain woke up to the result that polls had failed to predict on the 23rd of June 2016. There was a sense of deep uncertainty. Sterling went into a tailspin, falling 10% versus the dollar, and the FTSE 100 plunged 8% at one point. But what a difference a year makes. The FTSE 100 is now up around 18% since the vote, a strong performance by any measure. But sterling is down some 16% versus the US dollar. 1 year later, that weak pound sterling is beginning to weigh on consumer spending as inflation starts to bite. And that's causing some to fret about the economy. But there's another key change. The recent UK general election failed to deliver a majority government, making it harder for the mountain of new Brexit laws to be pushed through Parliament before the deadline to leave expires in March 2019. Over in Brussels, the official talks kicked off this week. And when UK's Brexit Secretary David Davis met EU Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier to get the Brexit ball rolling, the UK's negotiating position looked much weaker than 1 year ago. Al Jazeera's Lawrence Lee takes a look back on the year of the Brexit.
My government will renegotiate the United Kingdom's relationship with the European Union.
Given the political wilderness the UK now finds itself in, it's deeply ironic that the whole point of the Brexit referendum was to offer clarity. The referendum had eagerly been awaited by the Leave campaigners, cutting immigration, saving vast sums of money, and put it back in the health service, making Britain rich and proud once again. That was the vision. Against that, the Remain campaign looked uncertain. The results demonstrated it. History was made, and the man who'd called the referendum was dead in the water. A year ago, David Cameron, who'd called the referendum, was resigning as Prime Minister. It was his political enemies, those who had said that the health service would benefit from hundreds of millions of dollars, a rebate from the European Union, that the UK could finally control its own borders, free from the tyranny of Brussels. It was they who were in the political ascendancy. It doesn't really feel like that anymore. There was an immediate backlash by the 48% who'd voted to stay in. National shock at a sharp rise in xenophobic attacks on Eastern Europeans. A new Prime Minister emerged. She argued that reducing immigration was crucial, even if it meant cutting economic ties with the European Union.
What I am proposing cannot mean membership of the single market.
But the European Union was getting increasingly bored of trying to explain over and over again that if the UK wanted to maintain trade deals, it would have to allow migrant workers access to the UK. It all came to a head at a dinner in Brussels.
We have a problem because the British want to leave the European Union and it's not feasible that this can be done just like that.
Theresa May then went back on her word and called an election, which she said would offer clarity. It did the opposite, as she failed to win a majority. Suddenly, all those who'd said the government had to think again about its strategy were saying, "We told you so."
The whole of Europe has not collapsed. The EU project was not a Franco-German experiment, as they called it. So the people very, very angry. And I don't know how they can reconnect again with the mainstream politics.
A proposal for what might be a post-Brexit immigration bill would be nice, but we haven't had any serious, credible proposals on any of those things from this government. It's just hurtling forward into potentially the abyss of Brexit. It's absolutely terrifying.
Actual negotiations only began last week, with the European Union having no idea what the UK's positions are on a number of areas. Whether the government will even survive another year is an open question. The UK could easily fall out of Europe with no deal and no direction.
Well, in the first major move in discussions, the British Prime Minister offered European Union leaders a deal on allowing citizens to remain in their respective jurisdictions after Brexit. EU citizens will be given the right to remain in the UK if they've lived there for 5 years. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel says the move is a good start, but is it really a good start? The offer also has a lot to do with the large economic contribution EU nationals make to the British economy. Joining us now from Cambridge, Professor Kern Alexander. He holds the chair of Law and Finance at the University of Zurich. He's also Senior Research Fellow in Banking and Financial Regulation at the University of Cambridge Centre for Risk Studies. Good to have you with us, Kern. Brexit very much then a work in progress, but there's now, or is there, a greater realisation within the UK that the economy and jobs need to be safeguarded? I mean, Theresa May's pre-election rhetoric touched little on the economy and instead focused on curbing migration. Has that now changed?
Well, I think the economy is the most difficult part of the negotiations for Theresa May, and it's better in her negotiation strategy to start out on an issue where there is more common ground, which is the recognition of the rights of EU citizens living in Britain, and also trying to get agreement from other EU states regarding their recognition of the rights of British citizens living in the other EU states.
The EU 27 seem to hold the upper hand in terms of negotiating strategies. I mean, what do you think that strategy is, and will Theresa May's offer, her announcement, actually change that strategy?
Well, I think the offer is a very solid offer as a first negotiating step to address this issue of citizenship. It's true that the other 27 EU states are very tightly knitted together in their negotiations, and it's going to be very difficult for the British government to negotiate with the EU to get more concessions, because the British government, of course, does not command a majority in the Parliament. And so there's a real issue on whether or not the present Prime Minister can deliver on her concessions. So that's going to embolden, I think, the EU to take greater, stronger positions.
Do you think that it's possible that Brexit could be reversed sometime between now and March 2019?
Well, Parliament could pass legislation to reverse the triggering of Article 50 of the EU treaty. That's a legal possibility. Now, politically, whether it's going to happen, I don't think that would happen, because in the recent election, the Labour Party was not questioning Brexit. They were challenging the Conservatives on other issues having to do with social policy and the economy, and not really addressing Brexit directly. So I don't think there's political will in the Parliament to reverse the Brexit decision with legislation. And so really the real issue is, are we going to have a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit? And I'm afraid that Theresa May's position right now is leading us into a hard Brexit situation.
Okay, and given that then, given that Parliament might be pretty hostile to a hard Brexit, given the fragmented makeup of Parliament now, she lost her majority, is there any danger that the UK is going to miss this March 2019 deadline?
Well, there certainly is a danger that they're going to miss the deadline, but I think if they stay focused on the initial set of issues, which is how much does the UK owe the EU for the budget? The budget issue is very important. Also, the issue of mutual recognition of citizenship rights. And if they can deal with those issues within the next 2 years, they can have a preliminary agreement which can pave the way to future agreements that follow 2019 regarding bilateral trade agreements to open up the EU economy to British trade and investment.
So many industries are facing major challenges through Brexit. I want to talk about financial services for just a moment. How would fragmenting financial services damage both the UK's and the EU's economies?
Well, the Brexit would damage the City of London's position as a major financial center in the European Union. There is some question whether or not the ability to clear euro derivative trades will be continued after Brexit, because the European Union and the Eurozone in particular feels that should be regulated and governed by EU law. And so the clearing of derivative trades will probably gradually over time move to other EU cities like Frankfurt and Paris. Also, there's a big issue regarding large foreign banks that use London as a base to trade in the EU. They are now reconsidering their options. And so large, big US banks, big Japanese banks, they are creating subsidiaries in Germany and France and in other EU states from which they can obtain a single passport for trading, banking services, and investment services in the European market. So London will no longer be a base for the operation of these large foreign banks.
And Cohen, what about the Irish question? That border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, that border, I mean, surely can't revert to a hard border, can it?
Well, politically, that would be a disaster. I think it would undermine the Good Friday agreements, and it would and so the goal, I think, there's a special committee regarding on the Brexit negotiations that are looking at the Irish question. And of course, the Republic of Ireland wants to have free and unimpeded access to the UK, to the Northern Ireland economy especially. And so there would have to be exceptions made and probably not to have a hard border. So I think that the hard border will be gradually reduced and there will be a soft border framework put in place. But that, again, is subjected to negotiations that are going on now in the Brexit committee. And the issue is really whether Theresa May has got the political authority and clout to deliver on commitments that her Brexit negotiating team are making with the other EU states.
Cohen, really good to talk to you. Many thanks indeed for being with us on Counting the Cost. Now, a company in South Korea has opened what it says is the first BioPay shop, where customers can pay for things with a scan of their hand. The technology is just one of the many that the country is testing before rolling them out to the rest of the world. Andrew Thomas reports from Seoul.
Inside the world's newest skyscraper, the 5th tallest building in the world, tests are underway on the world's newest way to shop. Once a customer has pre-registered, linking a credit or debit card to a scan of their hand, all that's needed in future to pay for products and leave the store is another scan of the hand.
It's a verification and payment system. It uses the unique patterns of blood vessels on people's hands. Everyone's patterns are different.
They call it BioPay. Shop staff, the retailer says, need not be worried about it taking their jobs. This, it says, frees them for better jobs.
They can do more valuable work, like, for example, store management and the product management like that.
Would shop cashiers agree? There were none here to ask. This is a prototype store, at the moment open only to people working in the Lotte World Tower. About 1,000 of them are registered so far, but when this building fills, it's only just opened, they'll test the technology here on 5,000 people. The plan then is to roll the technology out across South Korea later this year and worldwide after that. South Korea is determined to stay at the forefront of technological change. The centrepiece of a computer show this week in Seoul was a display promoting a version of 5th generation or 5G mobile technology. The telecoms company developing it plans a big test at next year's Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. With mobile connectivity speeds many times faster than 4G, spectators with 5G connected headsets should get live high-definition virtual reality feeds of what the athletes are seeing.
So before 5G, people only can view the game through the TV flat screen. However, after 5G, through AR and VR services, people can experience the athlete's speed and viewpoint.
Once international standards for it are agreed, 5G should become common worldwide in the 2020s. South Korea, though, wants to showcase its version first.
Still to come on Counting the Cost, what China's tech giant Alibaba really wants. But first, crude oil prices are back in bear market territory. A bear market is typically defined as a decline of 20% or more from a recent peak. And it's got investors all in a spin because it's the first bear market for crude since a deal by the world's top oil producers to cut supply. That deal was expected to prop up prices and eliminate a supply gut. But US shale producers, who are not part of that deal, keep ramping up production. There's now a worry that lower oil could impact stock markets and shake up petro-dependent economies. Joining us now from London, Cornelia Meyer, an international economist and independent energy expert. Good to have you with us once again, Cornelia. Despite a heroic effort by OPEC countries and non-OPEC countries, prices keep falling. What's behind this latest fall?
Well, I think there's two things that's behind it. You see that one was expecting the inventory situation, the oil stock situation, to go down much quicker, and it just hasn't happened. And last week, or this week, was actually the first time that last week's figures by the EIA said the stocks came down 2.5 million barrels in the US. That's one. Secondly, whereas OPEC has cut with its OPEC non-OPEC deal 1.8 million barrels a day, and compliance has been stunning. In excess of 100%. They've been over-complying. What you saw is that in the US, they have been, upping the ante, and the shale producers have come back online with oil prices being, towards $50. Now, you also saw that the two countries that were exempt from the OPEC deal are Nigeria and Libya, and together they have upped their production by about 340,000 barrels a day.
Okay, in the short to medium term, what's the likely impact of this on the Gulf crisis, the ongoing Gulf crisis, and what's it likely to do to petrodollar dependent economies here in the Gulf? Is this an industry in decline?
Well, it's not an industry in decline, absolutely far not. And if OPEC hadn't done its deal, we would be much worse off. But in the short run, if you have to meet your budget, you need certain oil prices. If you're totally oil revenue dependent, so for some of the GCC countries, this is really not good news in terms of their revenue. For Russia, this is not good news because they have sanctions and they really need a higher oil price. And the reason they were willing to participate in this OPEC non-OPEC deal, they took half of the non-OPEC portion, was that 300,000 barrels a day is nothing on more than 10 million barrels a day, and the uplift you get from the higher oil price really helps. But when you don't see that uplift anymore from higher oil prices, it will be more difficult for OPEC to really drive in compliance.
Is the appointment of a new heir to the throne in Saudi Arabia having any impact on the price of oil?
No, I don't think so. And I think the new heir to the throne actually is in some sense good news because he's of a younger generation. It's a younger country. He is the man who, with his Vision 2030, which is very bold, who wants to revolutionize the Saudi economy. He's the one who also wants to privatize Saudi Aramco. So in many ways, actually, this is not a bad thing at all. It has no impact. What really has the impact is who produces how much, how big the compliance is of the OPEC deal. Is the OPEC deal big enough? It looks like maybe more is needed. And what's also important is that, as I said before, if you don't get that uplift from a higher oil price and you produce less, the incentive to cheat on the OPEC deal may increase. We hope it won't, but it may.
Cornelia, it's always great to talk to you. Many thanks indeed for being with us on Counting the Cost.
Thank you.
Now, Uber, the world's largest privately owned technology company, is hiring. A series of scandals has damaged Uber's reputation in recent months and led to the departure of several key people. Just this week, CEO and founder Travis Kalanick quit after an investor revolt forced him out. But it's not just the CEO position that's up for grabs. Uber's also seeking a new chief financial officer, chief operating officer, and head of engineering. Global index provider MSCI is pushing China to continue to reform its markets if it wants the world's big fund managers to invest there. From next year, a small proportion of Chinese stocks known as A shares will be included in its widely followed indices for the first time. Now, if all of this sounds rather technical. Bear with me. China is the world's second largest stock market, but to date, it hasn't really been considered a proper stock market by international fund managers, the people who look after your pension, because China has been known to clamp down on money leaving the country. Investors, though, have always been able to easily buy and sell stocks in companies like Alibaba, which is listed internationally. Alibaba, of course, the world's fastest growing internet-related technology titan, and it's aiming to grow even bigger, as John Hendren reports from Detroit.
It's the biggest company most Americans have never heard of. The Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba ships 4 times as many packages as Amazon.com on a given day, $547 billion worth in the past year alone. The name is well known on Wall Street, where its record-setting initial public offering in 2014 raised $25 billion. But it's little known among the shopkeepers and farmers of Middle America. So, in a mingling of cultures and kitsch, Alibaba is holding a kind of corporate speed date in Detroit this week, inviting American business owners to pair up, virtually speaking, with Chinese consumers.
We want to create 100 million jobs for the world. We want to support 10 million business be profitable on our platform.
Makers of everything from tooth flossing machines to shoes and jewelry, shown here in New York, are scrambling to access China's burgeoning middle class. It's expected to reach 600 million by 2022, twice the size of the total U.S. population.
Chinese commerce is beginning and brand loyalty is just forming. What we hope to gain is entry and entrenchment in Chinese global psyche.
Online commerce is increasingly replacing brick-and-mortar retailers, so the companies here are betting virtual commerce in an economy they call Chimerica will pay off. There's one problem Alibaba founder Jack Ma calls a cancer: counterfeits.
The main problem with Alibaba that they've been fighting for years is that they still have a fake product issue. In December of last year, they were blacklisted. One of their sites is blacklisted by the U.S. government for fake products. So they are battling that, and they're doing what they can, but government laws in China are lax, and so they struggle to fight that battle.
That hasn't stopped companies like McClure's Pickles from trying to convince Alibaba to sell their wares.
We want to do a deep dive into who the consumer is, what their interests are, just like we would do in any market.
Gotcha. So no concern about copycat pickles?
Not as of yet, no.
Jack Ma says he aims to create 1 million jobs in the U.S. in the next 5 years, a lofty goal and a lucrative meeting of East and West.
Afghanistan isn't exactly the first place that springs to mind when people think of online shopping, but one young entrepreneur is overcoming the odds to introduce it to the capital, Kabul. Rob McBride went to meet him.
Shah Faisal is a pioneer. He learned online selling overseas and brought his skills back to Afghanistan, a place not equipped for e-commerce.
You have issues with supply. Half of the time borders with this country are locked.
His TV ad says his is the country's first online store, but it's taken a couple of years to break through. He began with only a few products and sales figures to match.
We started off with 1-2 sales a week to 100 sales a day.
He's had to overcome skeptical customers, not used to buying at the click of a mouse.
Now we have these bags. They like to talk. They would be talking to you for 1 hour before they buy product. And they would be asking you for like 10 times, this is a real product.
And that's before the haggling starts. Then there's the problem of delivery in Kabul. Only parts of the city follow any sort of street plan. There aren't many things that the Afghans have the Soviets to be thankful for, but this is one of them. The apartment blocks that the Russians built, all neatly laid out and numbered. Is the rest of Kabul like this? No. Most of the city is a confusing maze of streets with no names and houses without numbers. It means delivery men like Zarif Mohammed often navigate by the nearest landmark, like a mosque or a filling station. And that's not all.
The traffic is often bad. Then sometimes the roads are blocked when a bomb has gone off.
It's a delivery service with a difference. But Shah Faisal is an optimist. Afghanistan has a young population that's online savvy, and his is a young team. And together they're taking on their country's intractable problems.
Rob McBride in Kabul ending our show for this week. If there's anything you want to comment on, please follow and tweet me at @afinnegan. Please use the hashtag AJCTC when you do, or you can drop us a line. Counting the Cost at aljazeera.net is our address. There's plenty more for you online at aljazeera.com/CTC. That takes you straight to our page, which has individual reports, links, even entire episodes for you to catch up on. But that is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Adrian Finnegan from the whole team here in Doha. Thanks for being with us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.